I got the sides done. It looks good. So what we're gonna start doing now is start working on edge bending on the exposed plywood pieces and on the back, namely because I just don't like the way the back looks right now. So I was able to utilize some of the scrap pieces of wood to cut all these. It turned out pretty good. First time I've ever done it. So I kind of liked doing it, and it saved me a little bit of money so I didn't have to go buy edge banding. So we're gonna start working on this and start buttoning this thing up. So what I did is I just squared up one end on the chop saw very carefully so you don't blow your piece out. And I'm just making sure this is gonna fit, which it looks like this is gonna be a nice, good fit. And I'm gonna take a measurement, mark it off on the wood, and then we're gonna see what happens. All right, so I cut this to size. I did have to make a couple adjustments on the chop saw. I did find out when you are cutting this, just go really, really slow so you don't blow out the side of it. It is fairly thin, and you should be able to, and that fits nice and good. And then you should be able to bend this around so it's nice and flush. So we're gonna go ahead and get this glued on, and I'm gonna use my handy dandy bandy clamps to secure this. This edge bending was cut from all the scrap pieces from the front and side frames that were previously attached. If you decide to do this, make sure you find a setup that works for your comfort level and take your time. I cut these pieces thicker than they needed to be on my table saw and then ran them through my planer to get them down to 1/8 of an inch. At the time, this was the safest method that I had. You could also use a bandsaw and a drum sander if you have them to get your desired thickness, but this was the easiest method that I had. The clamps being used to attach the edge banding are from Rockler Woodworking and are called bandy clamps. They have a rubber piece that attaches to each one of the jaws and allows you to apply downward pressure on the edge banding. I didn't want to use a nail gun during this situation as I was worried that it would crack the wood and create more work for myself. Although I did end up running out of clamps halfway through the process, so I grabbed the next best thing in my shop, painter's tape. Everybody loves painter's tape. When applying my makeshift clamps, I would put as much pressure as I could down on the edge banding before adhering the tape to the sides of the wood. This made sure that the tape actually held the edge banding down and not just in place. Well, apparently I forgot to film the previous step. What I did is I took a flush trim saw and cut all the plugs on the back of the cabinet and sanded the entire back of the cabinet smooth. I got all the plugs on the back side sanded flush, gave the back panels a good sanding to 180. I did attach two of the long edge banding pieces. Right now I'm working on getting the top of the cabinet edge banded. What I'm doing is once I get these cut to size, laying a bead of glue, and I'm taking a 23 gauge brad nailer slightly at an angle so it'll go in there. I'm just using 1-inch brads, and that seems to be holding that nice and steady. So I got just a little more I got to trim off here, and then I'll get that attached. Look at, I got it done. It looks so much better. Now that all that edge banding is on the back, the plywood's all hidden, I think it looks a lot better. It is the back of it, so some of the pieces aren't exactly fantastic, but definitely looks a lot better. I'm gonna let these dry because I gotta flip the cabinet on its back so I can flush trim a couple pieces on the front, and then we will start working on the base. You would think after doing this for a little bit, I'd get a little bit better at filming, but apparently I'm failing. So completely forgot to film putting the entire base on, but base is cut to size, mitered the corners, Started out with the top, measured, made sure that was nice and straight, and then cut the sides. I did oversize them a little bit on the bottom. I'll take a flush cut saw and cut them square. But base is attached, glued in and nailed. Got the clamps off and I uprighted the cabinet to get a good look at it, and I think it looks fantastic. The miters are fairly decent. Could have been a little bit tighter, but the gaps have all cleared up. I think that looks fantastic. So as of right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start working on edge banding the top and the shelves. And then once all that's done, we are gonna work on getting everything sanded up to 180 grit in preparation for finish. Even though all the shelves were cut at the same time, I wanted to measure and cut the edge banding for each shelf, just in case there was any variations. After the edge banding was cut to the correct size, I used good old painter's tape to clamp down the edge banding. Now, I could have used brad nails to secure it, but I didn't want to have any visible screws or nails anywhere on this project. Even though 23 gauge brad nails are very small, you can sometimes see it when light hits them. For the top of the cabinet, I put edge banding on all four sides. I cut the edge banding longer than needed and then butt up the next piece to the overhang. This made sure that there were no gaps on the top, and it allowed for a very clean finish. I was able to get all the edge banding done on the top and the shelves yesterday and let them dry overnight with the clamps on them just to make sure they had enough time to cure. So I'm going to pull the tape off, pull the clamps off, see how everything looks, and then I'm going to start working on sanding them all down. After that, we're going to just need to sand the cabinet, and then we should be ready for finishing. I ended up using brad nails, glue, and clamps. Made it even on both sides, so the reveal was going to be the same. Clamped everything down, sunk some brad nails into the bottom. Now I'm just waiting on the glue to dry. The entire cabinet is sanded both inside and out. Might need a couple little touch-ups here and there. Now I'm going to work on filling the nail holes on the cabinet. To make my wood filler for this project, I took some sawdust from the previous fun times of sanding and mixed it with some wood glue. I have some small trays that I use for mixing epoxy, which work perfectly. After getting it all mixed up really well, I took a toothpick and pushed the mixture into the nail holes. I would also recommend using your finger to push the mixer into the nail holes, just to make sure that the wood filler doesn't fall out after sanding. The bottom of. I spoke with the client and they requested to have some recesses put in the bottom of the shelves so the pegs would sit in them to keep the shelves from moving too much. So I measured the holes on the cabinet and got the dimensions we needed, and I whipped up this quick little jig for my trim router. And basically what it'll do is the trim router will sit in here and go just far enough to cut the recess for the peg holes. sockets routed out of the shelves. I've tested them across 3 different areas of the cabinet to make sure they all fit. Everything looks great. I'm going to go ahead and do just a good once over on these to make sure I didn't miss any scratches or anything with the sanding. And then I'm going to get both the shelves and the cabinet onto my finish table so I can give them a good wipe down and then hopefully start finishing. We have all the coats sprayed on the shelves. I am so excited to be at this point. This has been a long project. It's taken about 3 weeks at this point. So I'm just waiting on the final coat to dry, and then we should be able to start removing any dust particles that have settled on them. Once this is cured, we're gonna do a final check over everything to make sure we're good to go, but then we should be able to call this project finished. We're done! Okay, good. All right. So we are officially done with this project. Shelves have all cured, went over everything. There were a couple dust particles that got on them. So what I did is I took a paper lunch bag, rubbed it over the shelves and the cabinet. Surprisingly, it worked really well. I read that tip on a forum on Google. We'll try to figure out what to do without having to spray another whole coat of finish. And a lot of people suggested it, so I decided to give it a shot. Turned out really well. Highly recommend it. Thank you guys for watching this video. I do appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll be putting out more videos like this in the future. See you next time.